Good morning. I hope you're in a good mood today. We are here because we're getting the gang back together because we're playing Legacy. Taking a little vacation from Legacy as we've had modern events recently. We're back. We've got Julian Knab and NRG DOS here today. We're going to have 6 rounds of Swiss in the top 8. We've got a packed house of players. We are at the limit for 6 rounds, so we're trying out no IDs this time around at our Nerd event, as that was discussed last time, and it doesn't sound like we'll need them anyway, as it should be action-packed last round to make the cut into the top 8. Let's go ahead and bring in our first guest here today, Julian Knab, who will be here for the first half of the day with me. There he is.
Joe. Hey, everyone. Hey, thanks for having me. You're really looking forward to this.
Yeah, me too. I mean, this is kind of our home turf for you and I, a Legacy format, as opposed to modern or, some of those newfangled formats people are having. And so Legacy looks quite a bit different than it did, say, 2 months ago. We kind of maybe cleaned up the format a little bit.
Yeah, a lot, right? I think I've never really remembered a ban announcement where so many cards had to go. And the biggest one, of course, being Dreaded Arcanist, right? I think that had the biggest impact upon how you build a deck and how you actually want to play in Legacy. Because at least for me, I feel like we have so much more breathing room again, right?
Yes.
I don't know what you've been playing lately, but I'm sure unless you were playing Dreaded Arcanist, your deck probably has a lot more possibilities now.
Yes, I'm very happy to see Dreaded Arcanist go. I mean, I know there was some debate like, oh, this card, we need to get rid of these. But I was firmly in the camp that Arcanist was the most important ban. I had been playing a variety of things. I've been playing Goblins a lot, and I was actually main decking Lightning Bolts and Goblins, which you would never want to do. But the Arcanist was just always in the way. And now you get to free up those slots and play more desirable cards. And it's just, I mean, it was kind of just a 2-mana wrecking ball that was just so irritating.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because in the past, basically the game you would always play is when you play against the Delver deck, you trade your life total for cards and board position. Whereas against Dreaded Arcanist, you're not actually trading your life total, you're more trading cards. And it's so much harder to recover from card disadvantage than it is from a lower life total. And I think now that has been reversed again, I think the gameplay overall is just a lot better.
Yeah, because they do run out now. They didn't used to run out, and it was just, usually you're trading off. Yeah, if your cards are cheap, then you play a higher velocity at the beginning, and then you kind of run out in the late game. And they weren't doing that with Arcanist, and so yeah, I think kind of order's been restored, and they lost a couple cards, and their deck is still playable.
Yeah, pretty much, right? And the exciting thing to me right now is that people are trying to find the best flavor of Delver. There's the Rock Delver, the Teemo Delver variants. There's the Blue-Red Delver. People are trying to make Bug Delver, I think, again, which I guess is a way to abuse Uro. And even Grixis Delver showing up and putting up numbers. So to me, that's always the spice in Legacy, when we have lots of different takes on the same deck. And on top of that, a wide variety of viable tier 2 decks. And I think that has increased by a lot.
Yeah, I think I certainly have found I've played quite a bit in the last few weeks, and I've played a pretty big variety of decks. Even among the Delver decks, I feel like we're seeing, in order to we're talking a lot about Delver, but it's obviously one of the key decks of the format. I've seen main deck cards that I used to think of as sideboard cards, like Sylvan Library and Klothys. I've seen Klothys main deck too, which that caught me by surprise.
Yeah, Klothys is really good. It used to be a thing like as a one-off in the Rock Delver sideboards in the past. And I think people have really caught on to how good the card is, because there's very few ways in Legacy to actually remove the card. I think the most common one is Celestial Purge. And I mean, that already tells you a lot about the card, because Celestial Purge isn't common at all. Yeah. If anything, it's maybe an answer against the Marat Lodge token or something. But Klothys, really, it comes down and it's like, okay, now I play Protect the Queen. I just gotta survive for the next whatever. Sometimes just 5 turns or something, and then the game is going to be over. So it's a must counter that doesn't get hit by Pyroblast as well. So it's really in this super nice spot where you feel like, okay, if I can land this card takes over the game more than almost anything.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's almost like the Monarch, where it's just something that's just sitting there and just trying to, like you're saying, protect it and just maintain your advantage over time. So when round 1 is ready to go, we'll go ahead and jump in. It sounds like this is our quirk for this month, is the deck list feature isn't working, at least at right now, for the moment. So let's go ahead and take us down to the match. It sounds like the players are ready to go, and maybe even leaving us behind. So let's get down there. I believe we're watching Will Krueger and Larry Fields. We have Elves against Eldrazi Stompy. We're going to make you comfortable here on your first round of the day, so we brought your home team with us.
Yeah, go Team Eldrazi, right?
Oh, yeah, right. So we see a typical Elves hand with no creatures in it. What's going on here?
This actually looks really, really good, and the Saucer Spyglass certainly shouldn't be doing anything, and Elves looks to basically attack for at least 16 on the next turn. Assuming there's going to be a second Dryad Arbor here, you can just drop the Cradle and go from there. Depending on what you draw, you can even just like put them dead, and even if you just put them at 4 here with the Natural Order into the Kratos Behemoth, that's going to be good for you. The only thing that sometimes happens with Elves, if you draw your Kratos here, and trust me, I've been there, it's not pretty, but you can still recover. It doesn't really look like Eldrazi is putting anything to the board that really matters all that much here. And yeah, this is typical Elves fashion, right? You just get your non-Elf out, you get 2 more non-Elves, and then you hit with another non-Elf.
Yeah, are we sure this is an Elf tribal deck? It looks like there aren't any in presence. But yeah, this Eldrazi start is just looks like the Eldrazi player is down at least 1 mulligan, and yeah, naming Wirewood Symbiote, sure, but like you were saying, this another non-creature off the top, but Natural Order is live as it usually is for heavy damage.
Yeah, you really can just go in there and hit them, and I mean, yes, they might be able to drop something, but there's really nothing you have to fear out of Eldrazi, especially in the first game. So we see Will actually double checking, do I have Kratos in my deck? And it looks like, I mean, there's some tricky things you can try to pull with the Green Sun Senate, where you, for example, yeah, he's hovering over the Alzaro Shepherd. But if it was me, I would just go in, because the biggest danger you're in right now is something like, you drop the Cradle, you get Wastelanded next turn, and they draw a Thought Knot Seer from the top to take your Natural Order, which, funnily enough, you'd still be in a really good spot. But there's ways to snowball out of control from there. So, I mean, I certainly wouldn't blame Will if he's saying, okay, I'm just going to wait a turn and make sure that I'm going to get there. But yeah, you're basically in a 99 versus 97% scenario. And yeah, he's just making sure that there's really nothing that can totally destroy him if he passes the turn, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, he's being very careful here. Will Krueger, not a sometime legacy player, but more of a modern specialist. So he's probably checking things out, looking for any kind of surprises that he just wouldn't expect in the lists that are actually in there. We are playing with open deck lists, so he does have access to, as we see him checking out both players' lists, as he is, there's, what do I have to worry about, and also what am I capable of?
Yeah, and I like that he's not blindly immediately dropping the Cradle, because there is a scenario where you don't use the Cradle. Like, if you want to wait for the next turn, right, you use your Senate, but you don't drop the Cradle, so the Wasteland doesn't blow you out as much. But it looks like he's just going for the attack for 16 here, and I think that's a very good choice there.
Yeah, here we go. This is a big beating, and it is something that maybe conceivably the Eldrazi deck could recover from, as just being able to block the Crater Hoof would be enough to survive the turn. As it stands, but no, Larry Fields decides, you know what, I'm not going to win this game. I'm not catching up. That sluggish start there. I mean, turn 2 with 2 temples, really you're traditionally hoping for Thought Knot Seer there, which actually would have been excellent. And instead we see a lock piece that doesn't actually impact the board significantly, and Will Krueger is up the first game of the tournament.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
You just got to look at the deck list, and what I saw that actually scares me a lot is 3 Aulur's Dust, and I haven't even seen what's in the sideboard yet. So the Aulur's Dust thing, that gives Eldrazi a way to actually win the long game. There's other options, like growing a Walking Ballista if they play it, or maybe even Endbringer. But Elves usually presents more stuff that you can deal with on a one-on-one basis. So the moment that they're like, okay, I get this mass removal spell, pretty much this one-sided mass removal spell, this is what you're trying to beat, and that would even take away, I guess, there's almost no recovering from there, and the card you fear the most.
Right. I mean, it's you can, it's all. I mean, you can bounce some of your creatures, but you're pretty wiped at that point. And the fact that, unlike you have Dryad Arbors, because you're going so wide, because there's basically no removal in Eldrazi, so you're not probably holding back very often. But knowing they're there versus not knowing they're there, I mean, you have some chance of slow playing around that, don't you?
Yeah, you can. And I think if that's the way you want to go about it, then you probably want to bring in some kind of discard because it sounds weird because Eldrazi is actually like an aggressive deck, but the information of whether it's there or not already matters a lot because then you can commit to the board. And Elves usually, once it commits to the board, it's usually trying to close out the game on the very next turn. It's just a little bit awkward because Eldrazi also has to make a call whether they're going to keep Chalice of the Void in or not because Allosaurus Shepherd really lowered the value of that card in the first place. I believe Eldrazi should definitely keep it in because I've been wrecked by the card many times. And that's basically what also plays into whether you want to keep the Thought Seizes. From my side, from the Elf side, I've always felt like bringing Progenitors and then just attacking that twice is one of the best things you can do because the games are going to be somewhat scrappy. You mentioned they don't have a lot of removal. If they have Walking Ballista and you have like a weak start, that's one way they get you, and then you can turn that scrappy game into a 10-10. So there's my strategy.
All right, so whenever we're a little thrown off here, we're not having deck lists for viewers to look at, but whenever the game is ready to go ahead and take us down, you've played, obviously, probably as much Elves or more as any other person. Do you feel like this matchup is in your favor, or is this something where you're having to battle uphill?
I think it's not super in Elf's favor, but it's quite in Elf's favor. If you told me I had to play a Winnenden against Eldrazi, I'd be pretty happy, actually. Yeah,
that's kind of what I expected. You're very redundant. You have a lot going on, and they don't have they have kind of large creatures, but since you're going wide so often, it probably doesn't really matter if they have 2 5/5s, for example.
Yeah, the thing that actually, apart from All Is Dust, which is not common, not like in every Eldrazi list, right? This already looks to be like more of a Cloud Post variant. The one you actually fear is Reality Smasher. Because that thing, you can't pull your tricks, right? You block bounce with Wild Symbiote.
Right.
It doesn't care. It's just like 1 less damage, or even like the full damage of your bounce. So the Reality Smasher, especially if they go like turn 3, turn 4, and you struggle a little bit, because that's always how Eldrazi beats you, right? You have to struggle, because if both decks get a decent draw, then Elves is probably going to take it. But that's the beauty of Legacy. You don't always get a decent draw. You sometimes have to work with what you got.
Yeah, so we see here... Whoa, okay, we see Trinisphere. That's certainly significant. But I was going to say the Eldrazi Stompy deck, since we didn't have deck lists, this Cloud Post, Glimmer Post variant is certainly probably much larger on the curve than what we think of as a typical Eldrazi aggro deck. And we saw, real quick, we saw Will hesitating on what elf to play on the first turn. Is that against this deck? Do you think, is that the right choice, the Birchlore versus the Allosaurus Shepherd or the Heritage Druid? Is that what you would have gone with?
Since we have the Allosaurus Shepherd anyway, I think it wouldn't make too much of a difference. But I mean, you weren't really expecting a turn 2 Thought-Knots here anyway, because we saw the turn 1 Cloud Post. So I think it's safe to not play the Shepherd out right away. If it had been an Eldrazi Temple, for example, then I would have tried to get the Shepherd into play as soon as possible, just to avoid any kind of problems I would have with Chalice later on.
And we see here this Trinisphere making everything in Will's deck cost 3 or more, or both decks technically. But with access to only 1 mana, that means Will's not casting anything. And that's a tough way to win a game.
Yeah, and it's almost impossible to recover from here, because from here we are getting an attack for 9, and then next turn we're guaranteed to not be able to do anything, so we are at least facing another 9 again. And then if you go, like if we start considering chump blocking or something, then what? Like turn 5, 6, 7, we play like 1 Heritage Druid and pass. It's even with the land drawn here, I want to say it's over. It's and where's the writing on the wall? Okay,
so that is the end of game 2, and the players exchange fairly one-sided beatdowns. And Will's on the play for game 3. That helps, especially when you're guaranteed you can get 2 whole turns in before Trinisphere locks out your deck. But certainly that's scary. Trinisphere, Chalice, those kind of... Trinisphere probably more worrisome than Chalice against Elves.
Yeah, on the play, I think it's not that bad. It's, I mean, if they play the Cloud Post thing, they can reasonably well get a Trinisphere on a second turn. But if you factor that somewhat into your keep, you can try to get there. For example, if you get Acceleration on the first turn, or even if you drop a Queer in Ranger, which allows you to reuse your land. So you can get there, and once Elves gets going, even under Trinisphere, it's actually rather easy to put together a lethal natural order. It's only going to be a speed bump for like something like 1.5 turns. And considering that Eldrazi uses probably the second or third turn, the entire turn, to deploy the Trinisphere, it also means they're going to have less pressure. So on the play, I'm not that scared of Trinisphere. This is an awkward hand, but I like Oh, okay, we're mulliganing it. I was going to say, I like that we have double natural order, so we could even beat a Thought-Knot here, but this hand is much more explosive.
Yeah,
Wouldn't even be surprised if we send away a land here, but then again, there's Trinisphere, right? And that card's scary.
Yeah, although this time at least we can get underneath a little bit. So are you expecting, let's see, what are the options here? Are you expecting Zenith for Arbor here, or are we going to lead on Heritage Druid? What would you do here? What do you like?
I would definitely see it in Arbor here.
Okay.
But definitely. The acceleration is critical. I would even consider just running out the Glimpse next turn, because we can't really do too much about a Thought-Knot here that takes it away, or like a Chalice that comes down. We could try to beat a Chalice by finding a Shepherd with the second Senate, but the second Senate really wants to find something like a Wirewood Symbol if you're going for the Glimpse thing, and I don't hate just getting a basic here, but it doesn't really make too much of a difference. I mean, there's a thing to be said if the Spyglass comes down on the first turn and takes away your second land drop. That's kind of annoying. So I don't hate really. Oh, we're doing nothing. Okay, no, that's something. Wait.
Okay, so that's not among the starts that you were considering there. So I guess we're getting Dryad Arbor now.
Oh, but that's really scary. I mean, we have perfect information, right? So at least Will has. So we're probably not having our Dryad Arbor destroyed by anything here, but. Okay, where's the master? Quirion Ranger is one of the best cards you could have drawn here. I think you could even try to just go for a Glimpse Chin here if you were really bold. You go Glimpse, you go... nah, it's close. I think I wouldn't go for it.
Okay, so let's see. I mean, we have options here. We could Zenith for a 1-drop. We could Glimpse and Cantrip a little bit. We just want to get our board established here. I feel like, yeah. I mean, I'm surprised also that Will didn't play anything on turn 1, but we are maximizing a Cradle draw here and certainly developing it to some degree. We just got to get on the board, though, whatever we do here.
Yeah, if we want to really make sure that our Glimpse next turn is going to be as good as it can be, then we should probably send it for a Nettle Sentinel here, because that puts us at something like 60-70% to win the Glimpse. Of course, the thing you have to consider here is I would wonder whether there's Thought-Knots here coming down, taking my Glimpse. And at that point, I'm already wondering, okay, what is the second Senate then supposed to do? And that would probably get an okay, we get the Allosaurus Shepherd first. We can do that in that order as well. That's going to make the Glimpse a little worse, but we're going to be much better if the Thought-Knots here actually takes away our Glimpse.
Yeah, with Larry keeping a full hand this time, I would certainly expect that there's either some massively disruptive lock piece or a Thought-Knot coming down. And here we see Thought-Knot off of the Eye of Ugin plus Eldrazi Temple. And certainly Larry has his choice of cards here. We're probably taking one of the 2 spells. What would you prefer to keep if you were Will?
Well, if I could make a choice for to keep, I would definitely keep the Glimpse, because next turn we have at least something. Yeah, well, it depends on how you want to count, but we are looking at least like 3 mana, and that's going to be like Glimpse, Quirion Ranger, Heritage Druid, and yeah, we're going to have so many draws that even if we basically fizzle, then we'll probably be able to put a win together there from just using Allosaurus Shepherd activation. So I think at this point, this is a great position for Elves to be in, unless we really fizzle hard on the Glimpse and Eldrazi draws perfectly for the next 2 turns, because I think Eldrazi is still at least 2 land drops away from getting the devastating All Is Dust down. So in my head, that's the race that's going on right now.
Oof. Well, you got your wish. You got to keep the Glimpse. So let's see how this plays out. We are watching, if you're new to Nerd Rage, we are watching from Will's perspective. We watch all our games from a forced perspective, one player or the other, so you can put yourself in the position of the player and see how your decisions or their decisions play out in real time, as opposed to having the omniscient view of everything that's going on. So we see the Glimpse here, we see Quirion Ranger, and we're going to see an Elf deck start rolling.
Oh god, we already have progenitors. Like, if we want to, we can already make progenitors here. It's gonna be interesting whether that's what Will wants to do, because we can go for the safe progenitors, but there's a pretty good chance that if we just keep going on the heritage to it, we can maybe even put together a win here. But it's, I mean, just drawing a card here is free, basically. Oh, that's interesting. Okay. That you could cast it in a different way and keep the land drop bomb in case you draw Cradle. Of course, there's upsides to keeping the Dryad Arbor untapped, because then that's an additional attacker if you put together a natural order later on.
Mm-hmm. And now the Quirion Ranger allows more cards, more mana. There's a Zenith. Okay, so we have additional options here. We can untap this Arbor, and Yeah, the
From here,
world
we
is...
would probably just send it for a while, but simply to keep the glimpse chain going. Or if we want to play it really safe, we can also just get the natural order for progenitors. The interesting thing is actually to not use the natural order and just wait a turn and be able to win the game on the next turn. Of course, we have a problem if a second Thought-Knot Seer takes away our natural order, but even from there, I don't hate it.
Mm-hmm. So, Will, checking out O'Leary's cards available again. So, all his dust would be the only answer to Progenitus, I expect. I suppose if they're... Given this is a Cloudpost deck, there's Oblivion Stone, but I wouldn't expect that in Legacy.
Yeah, not these days anymore, right?
Yeah.
Okay, this is interesting. We're actually going for the progenitors. So we're basically saying if 2 turns from now you can actually get the Audis Dust, then you get me. But the other option is if you have the Thought-Knot Seer, then I'm in trouble if I keep the natural order, like I mentioned earlier. And Will made the decision to go for progenitors. And I mean, if we draw something really good, like a Cradle here, then we could even just try to win on the very next turn. So let's see how that's gonna go.
Yeah, the Allosaurus Shepherd is looming if their Cradle is drawn. That would be a mana explosion here. But in the meantime, the pressure is all on Larry Fields here to come up with some sort of defense to the monster Progenitus, and he doesn't have it. Progenitus takes down the match, and that's fitting because Godzilla is back in theaters right now, and Godzilla takes down this game. So Will Krueger's Elves, too much to Julian's delight, take down the first round of the event. And we could talk about what we just saw for quite a while, probably, but we might have a backup match. So if that's going to be something we can smoothly get into, let's go ahead and do that. In the meantime, we saw Elves, take down that match there. Elves feeling... Now, we're still fairly new into the current metagame post-bannings. Elves feels pretty good to you right now, or is this something you're just kind of playing with because that's your deck that you love?
No, I enjoyed quite a lot. I really enjoyed quite a lot because, like I mentioned, Dreaded Arcanist was keeping a lot of things down and we had to play so much removal. And that's not really something you want to do in Elves. So the deck has been unlocked big time.
Yeah. All right. So into our backup match, we have Marcus Ewaldh versus Gary Wong, a Miracle's Mirror, although different splashes. And we see a pretty busy board here. We'll see if the game count is accurate or not. It's conceivable this is still game 1, but I'm going to guess that it probably is not, although Marcus is pretty deep in the deck, so maybe not.
Okay, now we're seeing a lot of things. I'm actually super happy to see Felidar Retreat because that's one of the cards I once called as a sleeper card in Legacy on my podcast. And if that card gets going, it's super hard for Miracles to actually get rid of it. You can't Pyroblast it, other decks can't Abrupt Decay it. And we're just going to make a couple of cats here and eventually overwhelm Marcus. So Marcus is going to be forced into, I guess at some point, Terminus. And I think we already saw the card going to the top of the deck probably, or second from the top if you want to get it with Predict. And yeah, in typical Marcus fashion, he probably has like no win condition at all, except for maybe like an Entreat the Angels, or he's not really a big mentor guy. So I'm curious how this is gonna work out because those cats are about to threaten Chase, and we can like jump block one of them, keep the other one alive.
They may even be threatening Narset. The Gary Wong on obviously very far behind on cards in hand, in large part probably due to the Planeswalkers on the board. And yeah, there is the Terminus that you thought you saw that will protect the Planeswalkers. So Gary Wong with all kinds of mana and no cards in hand. And okay, there is your entry, the Angels. Not a card I can bring myself to cast very easily without Divine Top to consistently pull it off at instant speed, but here we have the draw step version, which is more than good enough with double force in hand. So it sounds like we actually may have deck lists ready to go this time around. So we have Marcus's deck. So Marcus Ewald's longtime Legacy player has favored High Tide Solidarity quite a bit over the years, different combo decks. He messed around with Doomsday and a Miracles player for a long time. So let's take a look at this build here and see what we're looking at today.
Yeah, this looks pretty classic, right? This is pretty reminiscent of the old top miracles. Interestingly, they're playing a lot of Mishra's Bobble now. I think that has become a lot more popular lately, partially because it powers up your mentors from the sideboard, but most importantly because it really works very well with Predict. And Predict is one of probably like the best card advantage space in the format right now.
Yeah, I mean, Predict has always been a drawing powerhouse. It's just a matter of whether you can fit in the deck or not, since there's so much incentive for every deck to run 1-mana cantrips to hit your land drops and set things up. And Predict is definitely a bonus if you can find the room for it. The Bauble, also allows, similar to the way Portent occasionally did, where you have the draw on your opponent's beginning of their turn, so you can Terminus away before their draw step, before their combat phase.
Dude, that's the worst feeling. That's so bad. If you've got a really full board and they resolve their bubble trigger and you don't immediately get priority back, you already know on Magic Online, damn, that's going to be a Terminus coming up and I'm going to be screwed.
Yeah, that can be bad. So we saw, this is Jeskai Miracles versus Bant Miracles. So out of the sideboard, we're really looking at the primary mover is we're going to have the Pyroblast, Red Blast effects versus the Veil of Summer. So that's kind of, a toss-up for both sides. Obviously, a powerful, cheap card that can wreak havoc on the opponent's plans. But I would normally say Pyroblast is better at dealing with cards that are on the board. But with Feldar Retreat, like you're pointing out, that's a difficult card to deal with, and Pyroblast does not answer that.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if Marcus actually brought in the 2 copies of Wear Tear, because we also saw stuff like Carpet of Flowers, we saw Sylvan Library. So it's probably going to be able to carry its weight and make an impact on the board. And otherwise, you're going to be in a big problem, because in this kind of matchup, you don't really want to rely on too many Swords to Plowshares. You don't want to rely too much on Terminus, even though you have to a certain degree. And that's always, you're much more familiar with this than me, because I've usually been an outside observer to this. But the delicate dance of how many removal spells do I keep versus how many extra threats do I bring in, and that spices up the games quite a lot.
Yeah. And that's been an internal question of how do you sideboard, because you want things like Pyroblast and Flush of Storm and Wear Tear. We see Marcus has drawn a significant number of sideboard cards to start here. And I think the default position is generally that you want to minimize the number of Swords of Plowshares, potentially all the way down to 0. And then how many Terminus do you need to keep around, because it deals with, Mentor plus tokens, or in this case, Feldar Retreat, I don't know what it makes, cats or cubs or something like that. And you can get them all at once. So I expect that the bulk of the removals still in Marcus's deck are Terminus. And here we see a Flusterstorm and a Preordain right off the bat.
Yeah, I guess Marcus just looking to trade a couple of cards, and he thinks the Flusterstorm is not going to be too effective later on.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting because he was opening up himself to Veil of Summer there, which is a trade you don't really want to make carelessly, but I guess that's the call he made there, and he thinks if the opponent really has Veil of Summer, it's not really going to get much better from here on out.
Mm-hmm. And then we're likely to see the Ponder here from Marcus trying to find a red source, most likely by way of a fetch land, to have held up as he passes the next turn, as there isn't a second. There's a second land, but it's just white, and that's not really what you're looking for. And there we do find a Scalding Tarn. Let's see
how greedy Marcus is going to be. I was almost wondering whether he's going to try to keep this. He can actually keep the second Red Blast if he's not forced to shuffle there.
Mm-hmm. And we'll see if Gary Wong is able to put pressure on here. Turn 3, the nuisance card would be Narset coming down, as that would have a hard time resolving, but it would certainly be powerful.
That's annoying.
That's not bad either. Carpet of Flowers, for people who may not play a ton of Legacy, let's go ahead and pop that up on the screen if we can. Carpet of Flowers, a 1 single green enchantment. During one of your main phases, your choice, you can add mana any color you want in quantity equal to the number of islands your opponent has on the board. So in this case, the Carpet of Flowers comes down main phase 1. Advance to main phase 2, make 1 free mana because of the 1 Tundra, and then, not spent here, but it's a continual mana source, and later in the game, it can provide quite a significant amount of mana.
Yeah, Marco's thinking about whether he should actually spend that wear tear on the Carpet of Flaws or just hold out, and yeah, he's going to take it away. The card's annoying. It also complicates his fetching. He could like consider getting the mountain, but he probably didn't even bring in the mountain, so you're gonna give your opponent even more mana in the long run. Mm-hmm. And oh yeah, I like this. I like this quite a bit, right? You're looking to make more land drops, so you can eventually get down Chase with protection. And this is giving you that. Oh, he actually brought in the mountain and he shuffled. Yeah, well, I should probably stick to the Elves matchups.
Huh? Yeah, that was. Yeah, I'm actually. I mean, he doesn't need a redundant Jace, but he definitely needed lands there. So I'll agree. I'm agree with you. I mean, he has the Snapcaster for Ponder next turn if he needed to hit a land, but then your blast is down. Yeah, this was definitely aggressive, I would say.
Maybe he's looking for something like, not even like a Forcible. I mean, I actually can't really tell you what Marcus was looking for there, but he got the mountain, which is probably not the worst card to draw there, considering at least from my perspective, are really looking to make land drops there.
Yeah. Okay. So we saw here the Mystic Sanctuary putting, I believe, Ponder on top of the deck, and then Snapcaster Mage to potentially priority into that Ponder. But we're going to see Red Blast cranked off here, and that'll be the end of Snapcaster Mage. Or
gotcha.
I made a mistake. Yeah, and Veil of Summer comes in, draws the Ponder off of the counter effect, protects the Snapcaster Mage, and this turns into a very efficient turn for Gary Wong. It's not building a ton on the board, but even just having Snapcaster on the board before your opponent's Jace comes down is something.
And Marcus is like, okay, I'm going to get this down. I know you don't have Red Blast, so there's basically no way you can actually kill Chase here. And yeah, there goes the Chase. But still, Marcus is not in a horrible position here, right? He also got his own Snapcaster Mage. He got Pyroblast as a high impact card. He can potentially find stuff with Brainstorm, and card quality wise. Oh yeah, honestly, like looking at the Teferi we just drew now, I'd be happy to be in Marcus' seat there actually.
Yeah, this is a very fine hand. No free counter magic, which is something that in some number may have been boarded out anyway. But Teferi can come down here and just absorb damage for a little while. This is not a card that Gary Wong can comfortably live with being on the board, and yet there it is.
Probably just going to be a plus, yeah. Anything else wouldn't really make sense.
Right.
I mean, I guess if you were to bounce the Snapcaster Mage, it can't come down the very same turn. But even then, you would probably be setting up for like a chase. But yeah, Marco's just gonna plus here. And then Gary is also going to be in this weird spot where you kind of want to get rid of the chase, but if you're using the Snapcaster Mage, it's going to take forever to really get there. And once Marcus untaps with Snapcaster, Pyroblast, and Teferi up, it's going to be a real uphill battle for Gary. I'm not even sure, like, what could Gary do here? Like, trying to get an Uro going somehow, but even that wouldn't be too impressive, honestly.
No, this is very tough. This is one disadvantage of not having the Jeskai, is that you don't have an easy one-card single-mana answer like Pyroblast effect to take out the Teferi once it's on the board. And this is tough. Gary's obviously all the counter magic is shut down by the Teferi, and also the Veil of Summer is dramatically weakened, as it's not going to just can't do much anymore. We see Snapcaster, okay, another cantrip, and so that gets picked off by the Pyroblast. We know that Gary can't fight back, so back to Marcus.
Yeah, and if Marcus wants to go for ultimate value here, he just ticks it up again. Okay, I was going to say if Marcus wants to go for ultimate value, he can eventually try to bounce his own Snapcaster Mage, but yeah, you want to get your Teferi to a healthy loyalty count to keep it around. So I would consider snapping off the Snapcaster Mage here, trading. Mm-hmm. Or not even trading. Like, actually, how do you like just firing a Pyroblast at the naked Snapcaster Mage? It feels bad, but on the other hand, that gives you the ability to bounce your own Snapcaster Mage next turn because your Teferi is still going to be on 4 and won't die to the minus.
Right.
I think that's what Marcus is actually considering here.
Well, the two options are to do what you just said, or to Brainstorm and then Snapcaster the Brainstorm and block to trade Snapcasters. My instinct is to do that. But your plan of leaving your Snapcaster on the board is certainly more desirable in the occasion potentially where Gary Wong plays a Narset or something post-combat here. And it looks like Marcus is going to go with your suggestion and keep his Snapcaster Mage alive and then just hold the Brainstorm in hand for potentially dealing with whatever Gary has here. As Marcus is, I mean, this is no sort of clock at all, but a pretty stable, healthy board position. And Mystic Sanctuary is actually not active. So Marcus, I was checking for that. Marcus cannot fetch out a Sanctuary this turn, as he does not have 3 islands on the board yet.
Yeah, immediately the value play. Marcus is a player I've known to be all about that value.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it looks like he's even going to be able to protect his chase going forward here. Like, he can just like drop the chase and the Icewind Codal is not going to do anything about it. And yeah, this is tough. This is really tough for Gary. I'm not even sure if there's any way for him to really come back there. I guess if you had something like a Mentor and you went really crazy with the Mentor, then yeah, because Marcus doesn't really have any kind of answer to Mentor as of right now. But
yeah, that's going to require Gary finding white mana also. So we're definitely a ways away. I believe that's just 2 snow-covered islands over there, right? So we don't even have access to it. Jace Brainstorm here, not the most exciting set of cards, but I mean, there's no real bad way to have this develop either. Although the Teferi is going to die, and that matters.
Yeah, I think Marcus was maybe trying to find... I can't even tell you what Marcus was trying to find, because he could have just either bounced the Icewind Codal. Of course, that gives the opponent an extra card, so it's not that great. Or he could just done another Snapcaster Mage into Pyroblast, take out the flyer, and keep his Teferi around that way. But now we're actually losing our Teferi here.
Yeah, so, this is... well, assuming this Brainstorm doesn't find a way to protect it, I mean, this is still... Having Jason on the board is great. There's another Snapcaster Mage in hand, which is probably the best creature in this matchup, because I doubt either of these players is smart enough to play Venser. But, yeah, losing the Narset and Gary having 4 cards in hand, I am less comfortable from Marcus's side. It's less safe now than it used to be.
Okay, yeah, I'm surprised. I'm actually wondering whether he's gonna use his predict on the upkeep to put away the polluted delta to draw just the extra cards, because that's just like the way I know Marcus. If you can draw extra cards at any point, it doesn't even matter at what cost. Like sure. You know, greatness at any cost and Dark Confident. Yeah. That's Marcus, but with card advantage.
Yeah. And we do have, I mean, with the Jace Brainstorm ability, this predict is going to be able to be set up whenever Marcus wants. As we see here, a new art Uro, a card that survived the banning, which I agreed with that decision. I did not think it needed to go. So we are going to ditch the Delta on the main phase. Like here's, yeah, the Snapcaster Mage was stacked above it, so that is gone. Marcus is floating with cards, which is not really something that is ever any downside to. So things are looking pretty solid here.
Yeah, we can just even put ourselves into a position where we red blast the Uro over and over again until Gary runs out of cards in the graveyard to feed the escape. So at this point, Marcus is really just either looking for, I guess, a Mentor or an Entreat the Angels, or any way to really close out the game. But honestly, in the long run, even Chase could just do it, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, there's just a wealth of card advantage here for Marcus. And with the Narset on the board, I mean, the Uro coming down isn't even all that bad. Marcus could bounce it with the Jace if he wanted to. Not that would happen, but it wouldn't matter.
Yeah, it's basically just a Crawworm that actually gives you extra health.
yeah, that's a good point. And Crawworm, as even players who are transitioning from playing all revised sealed to current day legacy, realize that Crawworm not the most efficient beat stick. So yeah, and there we go. Somewhat outclassed by about 5 generations of cards printed between then and now. Okay, we see Force of Will, pitching Brainstorm on the Mentor, and that does go through. Marcus decides, you know what, I'm not even going to bother red blasting, because that, I guess, potentially runs into a Veil of Summer. So let's just let it go. We don't need our win conditions. We have Jace. We have the built-in blue win condition. None of this card stuff. And Snapcaster Mages are really a win condition. I mean, it's hard to even describe how far ahead Marcus is in cards here.
You know, sometimes when I've played against Marcus, I was almost considering playing a deck that has, like, you know, 1 or 2 brain freezes in the sideboard, because he routinely goes down to like low 20 cards. And one day I want to see that happen.
Yeah, that would work. Okay, so here's another way of dealing with the Uro. Surgical Extraction is going to take it out, revealing a hand of Council's Judgment and Shark Typhoon. Okay.
That's actually really interesting because the Bant Mercus lists, whenever they get their Uro extracted, which happens quite a bit, right? Usually Shark Typhoon is one of the very few ways, very often actually the only way to really still get away with the game, because those random snake beats in the air, those usually are not going to cut it. But Shark Typhoon is sometimes one of the cards that they dig to find, and when they find it only like 3 cards down or something, it might be too late. But there might even be a world where Gary is just going to concede the game once Sharp Typhoon gets red blasted here, because cycling it is not going to cut it. You need to have it onto the battlefield, and Marcus is aware of that, right? Marcus has perfect information here, and he knows this is my job. And I wonder whether Gary is even going to try to set it up with like a Veil of Summer or something, because just running it out naked here once he has the mana for it is quite risky, especially after Marcus has probably already demonstrated that he has a lot of spells that he's not willing to play on the main phase, which are either going to be counter spells or additional copies of Planeswalkers. And yeah, that's just like such a tough call to make.
Yeah, we're going to see the cycle here. And this is, I mean, even if it makes it hard to win the long game, you have to win the current game first before you can even think about that. And so the attempt here is to make a shark and take down one of the Planeswalkers. At least Gary gets up, on the exchange card advantage wise, and then maybe the Council's Judgment can resolve and pick off a Planeswalker. Although that requires Gary to draw white mana, and he really can't afford to draw lands here. He needs to draw relevant cards. So, yeah.
That's just the power of Jeskai. If the game goes long, you would think that the deck that has access to Uro is gonna be better, but at least in my experience, the games play out a lot like here, like this one with the power of Red Blast just shining.
Yeah, it's hard to overcome that. And then there's just the quantity of Snapcaster Mages drawn here for Marcus. It is just free cards left and right. And these Snapcaster Mages are being recycled. And what is Gary Wong even, like you said before, what is he even hoping to draw here? It seems.
Yeah, I think at this point, the only way Gary can even win the game from here is using his own chase for chase ultimates. And we already see Marcus sitting on 2 Red Blast and 2 Snapcaster Mages. I think at this point, if somehow we find a way to deal with the Icewind Codal, Marcus can literally counter every win condition left in Gary's deck already.
Yeah, that's kind of rough. Even your statement, if somehow we can find a way to deal with the Icewind Codal, it's a 1/1 flyer. I'm pretty sure we'll find a way to deal with it. Or we could just ignore it. I mean, it's not like it's going to effectively attack down Jace anyway. And Marcus is still just loading up on more and more cards. Yeah, I like your Brain Freeze plan. I feel like that's live. I mean, this is about where Marcus ended up in game 1 also in terms of cards seen in the deck. I mean, this Bant Miracles deck, even though he didn't get a chance to see the deck list, is full of cantrips. And yet, Marcus is 10 cards deeper in the deck.
Yeah. I wonder... I don't know. We've always been in this position in Legacy for quite a while where Jeskai Miracles was playable, but there were very few people who were actually actively excited about the deck. And from talking to Marcus, he's also not like super excited about the deck, but when it gets going, and it certainly does here, it's one of the hardest decks to stop. Like I like the matchup, for example, against Elves, because it's pretty back and forth. But if we fall behind, it's so hard to ever come back from it because the card advantage is absolutely unparalleled in Legacy.
Right. Oh, and okay, Teferi Timer offer, that would be great for Gary Wong, but there's just no way. So that's
the concession.
Yeah, and that will do it. Marcus Ewaldh will sweep Gary Wong in the Miracles quasi mirror and take down his own round 1. So yeah, two quite different matchups there we get to look at in round 1. So I hope you all enjoyed that. We'll be here all day long. We got 6 rounds of Swiss. We got a top 8. We got prizes. We got cash prizes. We got new KMC prizes, new sleeve technology that's not even on the market yet to give to the players. We'll talk about that later. But we just found out about that this morning. Lots of good stuff going on here today. Julian, if you got to like, what's a Fringe deck that you would be? As it sounds like we have the results available for the round, so let's go ahead and put those up on the screen while we talk about this. Just take a peek at kind of some of the players and decks that are in the field. Julian, if you got to choose a Fringe deck that we randomly got to watch in this event, what's something that's kind of a deck that you don't feel super knowledgeable about that would be exciting to see?
In Legacy in general right now, or from what we see over here right now?
Whatever you pick. Either way.
Let me think. I honestly always feel like most of the late game Dark Depth decks are pretty exciting. I mean, that's not exactly Fringe, but okay, if I was going to go really crazy, I would want to see Enchantress, because I've seen people say, hey, Enchantress really beats this metagame pretty hard, and I don't believe them. But I'd love to be wrong on that, because that's just like one of the ways. That's how I got into Legacy. That was my very first Legacy deck. And that's this new enchantment creature that makes all your enchantments uncounterable. So that's something that I would love to see in Legacy. I don't know if anyone registered that, but that's the Fringe deck I want to see.
Sure. Yeah. No, we do. So you see this. Maybe we can slow this down a little bit. I feel like we're going a little faster than we normally do here as we scroll through these. But this is just some of the players and decks that we have in the field today and the results. And these are live tallied. So the matches where you don't see a game score, it's because the players are still in action. But certainly we see a few somewhat fringy decks here. We see Mono Red Prison. We did see some of the Artifact Storm decks, as it was renamed this week, and I actually preferred that name to whatever we were previously calling it. But yeah, there's certainly some stuff in the field. We've got a variety of fringe. I pulled out a set of kind of fringe-ish Legacy decks over the last week. Let's go ahead and if we can come back to us here. If we have it available, let's look at the Elf Brainstorm deck. I would like to see Julian's opinion on this. This is an idea that is not probably brand new, but it's something that's certainly never caught on. And this 5-0'd a Magic Online League this week. So I want your thoughts as a longtime Elves player on what's going on in this list.
Okay, this is... I almost want to call this bug natural order with the why would be a draw engine. Sure. Okay. And I wouldn't be surprised if we didn't even see Glimpse here. Yeah, it looks like, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think there's not even a Glimpse here anymore. Right. Yeah, this is... This is something. People have been trying to put blue in Elves for many, many years. It has somewhat worked out. And like one of the first cards that comes to mind is always Brainstorm, of course, but also Coiling Oracle, because Coiling Oracle allows you to get some really sweet plays going on where despite already having made a land drop, you can put another Cradle into play with a triggered ability if you reveal it from the top. And this is as far pushed as I've ever seen an Elves deck.
Yeah, that's why I just wanted to have you look at it. So just to give you another minute to digest what's in here. So like Julian pointed out, we have Coiling Oracle. We have Elvish Visionary as the 5th copy of itself, whereas the first 4 are the Coiling Oracles. We have a couple Ewaldhs. So our Green Sun Zeniths have more mid-range usage than they typically would. And we don't have the Glimpse of Nature, so we don't bother with Nettle Sentinels, and we don't have as much ability to just kind of build all the way through the deck. We're on Haymakers and card advantage, I guess. Does that pretty much summarize what we're looking at here?
Yeah, pretty much. And I just noticed we're also only playing 3 copies of Gaia's Cradle. So yeah, this is almost Maverick in disguise. This is very much a mid-range deck that just happens to have some kind of combo finish.
We have 4 Force of Wills in the sideboard. I guess
it's getting crazier.
Yeah, and days. So yeah, this is Elves with 9 counters in the 75. Certainly a little bit different. Anyway, we've got a whole collection of kind of crazy decks that actually had success that I pulled out to challenge our guests with over the course of the day. So you'll see some more of that, and we'll see some more Legacy action when we come back for round 2 in just a couple minutes.